What if helping an elderly stranger cross a street could turn a teenager into a community hero overnight? This is Jamal Carter, a 16-year-old boy who saw someone in need when others just walked by. That simple act of kindness would soon ripple through his life in ways no one could have imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Every morning in Westwood Heights, the same scene plays out like clockwork. Jamal Carter wakes before dawn in the cramped two-bedroom apartment he shares with his grandmother, Mabel, and his younger sister, Zoe. The alarm clock isn't necessary anymore. His body has memorized the rhythm of responsibility. It's 5:15 a.m., and while most teenagers are still deep in dreams, Jamal's day has already begun. The floorboards protest with soft creaks as he navigates the narrow hallway, careful not to wake Grandma Mabel. She pretends to sleep at this hour, but Jamal knows she's awake, listening to his movements, worrying silently, despite his best efforts to shoulder the family's burdens alone. Through the thin walls, he can hear her labored breathing, the wheezing evidence of the COPD that's been slowly claiming her strength over the past 3 years. Their apartment tells its own story without words. The faded yellow wallpaper curls slightly at the seams, and water stains map the ceiling like continents on a forgotten globe. The furniture is mismatched but meticulously clean, Grandma Mabel's stubborn pride refusing to let poverty dictate dignity. "We might not have much," she always says, "but what we have shines with care." Jamal pulls on the same jeans from yesterday, checks his pocket for bus fare, $3.75, just enough for the commute to school. After school, he'll walk the 4 miles to his job at Wilson's Grocery, but that's a problem for later. Right now, his focus is on making it through the morning routine without waking his grandmother or sister. In the kitchen, he prepares 3 bowls of oatmeal, adding a sprinkle of cinnamon to Zoe's portion, the small luxury that makes her smile even on the hardest mornings. He packs 2 lunches, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple for his sister, the same for himself. The refrigerator holds little else: milk, eggs, and the groceries that his employee discount makes possible. Payday isn't until Friday, and today is only Tuesday. The mental mathematics of survival is a skill Jamal mastered long before algebra. The bathroom mirror reflects a face too serious for 16. Jamal's eyes hold a quiet determination that most adults never achieve. His shoulders already carry the weight of family responsibility, but there's strength there too, not just physical, but the kind forged by necessity. He splashes cold water on his face, brushes his teeth, and whispers the same words he says every morning: "One day at a time, just one more day." By 6 a.m., he's gently waking Zoe for school. At 12, she still retains the innocence he's determined to protect. "Morning, sunshine," he whispers, and she grumbles dramatically before breaking into a sleepy smile. She doesn't fully understand their situation. The eviction notices Jamal has intercepted, the medical bills he hides in his dresser drawer, the college applications he stopped filling out. To her, Big Brother is simply the hero who makes sure there's always food and clean clothes and help with homework. As they eat breakfast, Grandma Mabel emerges from her room, oxygen tank trailing behind her like a faithful pet. "You children are up too early," she scolds gently, though this routine has been unchanged for months. Her hands shake slightly as she lowers herself into a chair, but her eyes remain bright and alert. "Jamal, you working at the store again today?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Wilson asked if I could stay late to help with inventory," he lies smoothly. The truth is, he requested the extra hours himself, desperate for the additional income. The electric bill is due next week, and Grandma's prescription needs refilling. "That man works you too hard," she mutters, but pride shines through her concern. "Your grandfather would be so proud to see the man you're becoming." Jamal just nods, swallowing the lump in his throat. Grandpa Carter has been gone for 3 years now, the same accident that left Grandma with mounting medical bills and the responsibility of raising 2 grandchildren on a fixed income. Before the accident, Jamal had been a typical kid: basketball team, science club, dreams of engineering school. Now, those dreams seem like luxuries from another lifetime. The morning commute takes Jamal and Zoe through neighborhoods that chart the economic topography of Westwood. They pass the manicured lawns of the north side, where sprinklers hiss defiance at the drought restrictions and luxury cars gleam in circular driveways. They pass the small businesses along Main Street, some thriving,
others bearing "for lease" signs that seemed to multiply monthly. Finally, they reached the transit center where Zoe's school bus waits. "Remember, Miss Peterson is picking you up for your doctor's appointment at 2:30, Jamal reminds his sister as he straightens her backpack straps. "I put the co-pay money in the front pocket. Call me when you're done, okay?" Zoe rolls her eyes with all the dramatic flair of pre-adolescence. "I know, Jamal, I'm not a baby." "No, you're not," he agrees, suddenly struck by how quickly she's growing up. "But you're still my responsibility." "And you're still annoying," she quips, but hugs him tightly before running to join her friends. Jamal watches until her bus pulls away, then checks his watch. If he hurries, he can make it to school with enough time to finish the chemistry homework he fell asleep over last night. The city bus is crowded with morning commuters, construction workers in paint-splattered clothes, office workers in budget suits, other students clutching backpacks and travel mugs. Jamal claims the last available seat and pulls out his textbook, determined to make use of every minute. Westwood High School rises like a weathered fortress at the edge of town. Built in the 1960s, its brick facade has withstood decades of educational reform, budget cuts, and changing demographics. Inside, the hallways buzz with teenage energy, a chaotic symphony of slamming lockers, overlapping conversations, and the perpetual drama of adolescent social dynamics. For Jamal, school exists in a strange duality. Here, he excels, his academic performance a point of pride and possibly his only ticket to a better future. But it's also a daily reminder of the widening gap between his reality and his potential. His classmates talk about college tours and SAT prep courses while he calculates whether this month's paycheck will cover both the water bill and Grandma's oxygen. Mr. Fernandez, the AP physics teacher, stops Jamal in the hallway. "Carter, did you finish that scholarship application we talked about? Deadline's Friday." "Working on it, sir." The half-truth bitter on his tongue. The truth is more complicated. The application requires parental financial information, a $75 processing fee, and time he simply doesn't have. "Don't miss this opportunity," Mr. Fernandez presses, his concern genuine. "Your test scores are exceptional. You could get a full ride if you apply to enough places." "Yes, sir. Thank you." The conversation ends there because what else can Jamal say? That college feels like a fantasy when survival is the daily goal? That he's more worried about Grandma Mabel's increasing shortness of breath than about his future education? The morning classes pass in a blur of lectures, note-taking, and the constant mental calculation of hours until payday. During lunch, while other students crowd the cafeteria, Jamal retreats to the library. The quiet space allows him to tutor younger students for extra credit and occasionally small amounts of cash that parents slip him in gratitude. Today he's helping freshman Kevin Williams with algebra equations. So, you see, when you isolate the variable on one side, the equation becomes much simpler to solve. Kevin nods, comprehension dawning on his face. "That actually makes sense when you explain it. Mr. Davis just writes stuff on the board and expects us to get it." Different teachers have different styles. Sometimes you just need to hear it explained another way. "My mom says you're a better teacher than half the staff here. She wanted me to ask if you could tutor my sister, too. She'd pay you, of course." The mention of payment catches Jamal's attention. Another tutoring client would mean a few more dollars each week, maybe enough to start a small emergency fund for Grandma's medical needs. "Sure, I could do Tuesdays after school before my shift at Wilson's." The afternoon schedule is equally demanding. AP Literature, where they're discussing The Great Gatsby and the elusive American Dream, a concept that seems increasingly abstract to Jamal. History, where Mr. Collins lectures about economic disparity in the 1920s, while Jamal silently draws parallels to the present. Spanish, where he excels despite never having traveled outside of Westwood.
After the final bell, most students flood toward the parking lot, toward sports practice, toward the mall or home. Jamal heads in the opposite direction, beginning the 4-mile walk to Wilson's Grocery on the east side of town. The walk takes him through the changing landscape of Westwood, past the high school's manicured fields, through the small downtown with its mix of struggling family businesses and corporate chains, past the community college he sometimes allows himself to dream about, and finally into the working-class neighborhood where Wilson's has served the community for 3 generations. The route includes crossing Maple Avenue, one of the busiest intersections in town. The crosswalk is notorious for its short signal timing, barely enough for a healthy adult to make it across, let alone someone elderly or disabled. It's here, at this ordinary corner, that Jamal's life is about to intersect with destiny in the form of an elderly man hesitating at the curb. Jamal notices him immediately, tall and thin despite the slight stoop of age, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. His clothes speak of another era, pressed trousers despite the heat, a button-down shirt and a sweater vest that seems too warm for the season. What catches Jamal's attention, though, is the man's expression, a mixture of determination and fear as he eyes the crosswalk signal, already beginning to flash its warning. Without hesitation, Jamal approaches. "Excuse me, sir. Would you like some help crossing?" The old man turns, startled, then relieved. His eyes, a striking pale blue that stands out against his weathered face, assess Jamal quickly. "That would be very kind, young man. These legs don't move like they used to, and that light," he gestures toward the crossing signal, "seems to think we're all Olympic sprinters." Jamal smiles. "I'm heading this way anyway. May I?" He offers his arm, which the elderly man accepts with dignity. "I'm Walter," the old man introduces himself as they step off the curb together. "Walter Blackwood." "Jamal Carter," he responds automatically, carefully matching his pace to Walter's labored steps. "Do you live around here, Mr. Blackwood?" Walter shakes his head. "Just visiting. My driver dropped me off to run an errand, but I'm afraid I miscalculated the distance. These old maps in my head aren't as reliable as they once were." The light begins flashing more urgently, and Walter's pace falters slightly. Without making it obvious, Jamal adjusts his support, taking more of the older man's weight. "We've got plenty of time," he assures Walter, though they both know it's not strictly true. Halfway across, the light changes to solid red. Cars on both sides rev their engines impatiently. One driver honks, the sharp sound making Walter flinch. "People in such a hurry these days. When did we decide that saving 30 seconds was worth endangering others?" "My grandma says the same thing," Jamal agrees, positioning himself slightly between Walter and the traffic, a human shield against impatience. "She says our generation mistakes movement for progress." Walter chuckles, a warm sound that transforms his serious face. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." They reach the opposite curb just as a car accelerates through the newly green light, passing close enough that Jamal feels the rush of air. Walter steadies himself against a lamppost, breathing heavily from the exertion, but composed. "Thank you, Jamal," he says formally. "That was more challenging than I anticipated." "No problem, sir. Are you sure you're okay? Do you need to sit down for a minute? There's a bench over by the bus stop." Walter shakes his head. "I've never been one for public resting. Makes a man look feeble." Then, perhaps seeing Jamal's genuine concern, he relents slightly. "But I wouldn't mind walking at a more leisurely pace to wherever you're headed, if that's acceptable. I find I'm not quite ready to continue alone." It's a request delivered with such careful dignity that Jamal understands immediately. This is a proud man asking for help in the only way he can. "I'm heading to work at Wilson's Grocery. It's about 6 blocks from here. They have a pharmacy counter with seating if you need a rest when we arrive." "Wilson's," Walter repeats, something unreadable flashing across his face. "Yes, I know the place. Shall we?" They walk slowly, Walter's cane tapping a steady rhythm on the sidewalk. Despite the generational gap, conversation flows easily between them.
Walter asks about school, listening with genuine interest as Jamal describes his classes, his grades, his position on the academic decathlon team. Jamal, in turn, learns that Walter was once a civil engineer who helped design bridges all over the state, connecting places and people, as he describes it. "And what are your plans after high school?" Walter asks as they pause at another crosswalk. "College, I assume, with grades like yours." The question lands like a stone in Jamal's stomach, heavy and unwelcome. "That's the goal," he answers vaguely. "I'm looking at scholarship options." Walter seems to sense the hesitation. "Education is an investment," he says carefully, "one that pays dividends far beyond the financial." "Yes, sir," Jamal agrees, though his mind is calculating a different kind of investment. The cost of Grandma's medications versus the application fees for colleges he probably can't afford to attend. As they approach Wilson's grocery, Jamal checks his watch. "I'm actually running a little early for my shift. Can I help you find what you came to town for, Mr. Blackwood?" Walter pauses, leaning more heavily on his cane. "Actually, I've been considering some community investment opportunities in this neighborhood. I was hoping to get a feel for the area, the people, the needs, the potential." "Investment opportunities?" Jamal repeats, puzzled. "The neighborhood around Wilson's isn't exactly prime real estate. Most businesses struggle to stay afloat, serving a community where many families live paycheck to paycheck." "Not all investments are measured in dollars and cents," Walter says cryptically. Then more directly, "Tell me, Jamal, if you could change one thing about this community, what would it be?" The question catches Jamal off guard with its sincerity. He considers it carefully before answering. "Healthcare access," he says finally. "My grandmother has to take 3 different buses to see her specialist. The clinic here closed last year, budget cuts. Now people either go without care or spend hours on public transit to get basic services." Walter nods, expression thoughtful. "And the school, you mentioned outdated textbooks earlier." "It's not just textbooks," Jamal admits. "The computer lab has machines older than I am. The science equipment is from the 90s. Teachers buy their own supplies. Kids with potential don't have the resources to develop it. And yet, you're thriving academically despite these obstacles," Walter observes. Jamal shrugs, uncomfortable with the praise. "I got lucky. Good teachers who care, a grandmother who values education. Not everyone has that." They reach the entrance to Wilson's grocery, a modest front store with hand-painted signs advertising weekly specials. Through the large front windows, Jamal can see Mr. Wilson himself at the register, a gray-haired man with perpetually rolled-up sleeves and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "This is where I need to start my shift. The pharmacy counter is toward the back if you need to rest. Mr. Wilson can call you a taxi if you need one." Walter extends his hand, and when Jamal takes it, the grip is surprisingly strong. "You've been extraordinarily kind, Jamal Carter, more than you realize." "It was nothing, sir, just a street crossing." "Was it?" Walter's eyes seemed to see right through him. "I think we both know better than that." He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a business card, handing it to Jamal. "I may have some opportunities that would interest a young man of your caliber. Would you be willing to meet again, perhaps with your grandmother present?" Jamal accepts the card automatically, glancing down at the embossed lettering. Walter Blackwood, Blackwood Foundation. Below that, a phone number with an area code he doesn't recognize. "What kind of opportunities?" Jamal asks cautiously. Years of his grandmother's warnings about strangers and too-good-to-be-true offers making him hesitant. "The kind that recognize potential," Walter answers simply. "The kind that build bridges, not just across rivers, but across circumstances." He gestures toward the door. "Don't be late for your shift. We'll speak again soon." With that, Walter turns and walks away.
His gait still slow, but somehow more purposeful than before. Jamal watches him for a moment, puzzled by the entire encounter, before tucking the business card into his wallet and heading into the store. He has no way of knowing that in less than 24 hours, that simple card will become the key to possibilities he hasn't dared to imagine.
As he clocks in for his shift, Jamal can't shake the feeling that something significant has just occurred, that in helping an elderly stranger cross a busy street, he may have started crossing a boundary in his own life, from the limitations of the present into an unexpected future. Wilson's Grocery welcomes Jamal with the familiar symphony of commerce, the electronic chime of the cash register, the squeaky wheel of shopping carts, the murmur of conversations between neighbors discussing the rising cost of milk. Mr. Wilson looks up from his inventory clipboard and nods in greeting, his perpetually furrowed brow relaxing slightly at the sight of his most reliable employee. "You're early, son," he notes, checking his watch against the wall clock. "Everything all right?" "Yes, sir," Jamal responds, tucking Walter's business card deeper into his pocket. "Just managed my time well today." Mr. Wilson studies him for a moment longer than necessary, the kind of assessment that comes from decades of reading people across a counter. "Well, since you're here, mind starting in the stockroom? Tuesday delivery came in heavy. Seems everyone's stocking up before that storm they're predicting for the weekend." The stockroom becomes Jamal's world for the next 3 hours. Lifting, sorting, organizing, checking expiration dates. Physical labor that requires just enough attention to quiet the questions swirling in his mind. Questions about Walter Blackwood and his foundation, about opportunities that recognize potential, about bridges across circumstances. At 6:30, his phone vibrates with a text from Zoe. "At home with Grandma. Doctor says my asthma's better, but we need to refill the prescription. $32 with insurance." Jamal's mental accounting adjusts automatically. $32 is manageable, especially with the extra hours this week. He texts back, "We'll pick it up tomorrow. Pasta for dinner?" The response comes quickly. "Grandma says she's making chicken. She's having a good day." A good day. The simple phrase lightens Jamal's heart. Grandma Mabel's good days have become increasingly rare, days when her breathing comes easier, when pain doesn't shadow her eyes, when she can stand at the stove and cook the meals that once defined her role as family matriarch. His shift ends at 8 p.m., but Mr. Wilson asks if he can stay until closing. "Register's been running nonstop," the older man explains. "Could use another pair of hands." Of course, Jamal agrees immediately, grateful for the additional hour of pay. As he helps the last customers and begins the closing procedures, his mind drifts back to Walter Blackwood. Something about the man's questions feels significant now. The pointed interest in the community, the inquiry about healthcare access, the assessment of educational resources. By the time Jamal locks the front door behind Mr. Wilson at 9:15 p.m., his curiosity has overcome his caution. Standing under the fluorescent glow of the store's exterior light, he pulls out his phone and searches Walter Blackwood Foundation. The results make him blink in surprise. Walter Blackwood isn't just some elderly man with an interest in community investment. He's a billionaire philanthropist, founder of Blackwood Engineering and the Blackwood Foundation, which has funded everything from hospital wings to scholarship programs across the country. Articles detail his rise from modest beginnings to one of the wealthiest self-made men in America, and his subsequent dedication to building bridges of opportunity for underserved communities. Images show Walter at charity galas, at building dedications, at university commencements where he's receiving honorary degrees, always composed, always dignified, always with those same penetrating blue eyes that had assessed Jamal so carefully at the crosswalk. Jamal's thumb hovers over the business card in his other hand, now understanding its potential significance. Why would someone like Walter Blackwood be interested in him, in this neighborhood? The cynical part of his mind, the part shaped by years of watching opportunity bypass his community, suggests a tax write-off, a publicity stunt,
a billionaire's idea of charity tourism. But another part remembers the genuine interest in Walter's questions, the careful dignity with which he'd accepted help, the way he'd looked at Jamal as though truly seeing him. The walk home takes Jamal past shuttered businesses and dimly lit streets. The neighborhood isn't dangerous exactly, but it wears its economic struggles openly, in the faded awnings of family stores fighting to survive against big-box competition, in the patched potholes that reappear after every heavy rain, in the community center that now opens only 3 days a week due to budget cuts.
He passes the intersection where he'd met Walter, now quiet in the late evening hours. The crosswalk signal still flashes too quickly, a small daily injustice that most people have simply learned to accept. For the first time, Jamal wonders why no one has ever thought to adjust it. Home is a second-floor apartment in a building that once housed factory workers when Westwood's manufacturing sector thrived. The exterior needs paint, and the elevator has been temporarily out of service for 3 years, but inside, the apartment radiates the warmth of family, despite its modest furnishings. Grandma Mabel sits at the kitchen table sorting medications into her weekly pill organizer. She looks up when Jamal enters, her face transforming with a smile that erases years of hardship. "There's my workin' man," she says, pride evident in every syllable. "Chicken's in the oven, so he's finishing homework." "You should be resting," Jamal says automatically, noting the slight wheeze in her breathing. "I'll rest in my grave," she retorts, a familiar exchange. "Tonight was for cooking. Doctor says my numbers are stable." Jamal kisses the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of cocoa butter and the lavender sachet she keeps in her sweater drawer. "Any numbers in particular?" "All of them," she says vaguely, which means she doesn't want to worry him. "Sit. Eat. Tell me about your day." He considers mentioning Walter, but decides against it. The encounter still feels too uncertain, too potentially disappointing if nothing comes of it. Instead, he talks about school, about Mr. Wilson asking him to manage the register, about Zoe's improving asthma. Normal things. Safe things. After dinner, when Zoe has gone to bed and Grandma Mabel dozes in her recliner, Jamal finally pulls out Walter's business card again. The simple white rectangle seems to vibrate with possibility, or perhaps warning. He remembers Walter's request to meet again, preferably with his grandmother present. What opportunities could a billionaire philanthropist possibly want to discuss with a 16-year-old stock boy from Westwood Heights? The next morning follows the same routine: early rising, breakfast preparation, the careful management of medications and schedules. The only difference is the business card burning a hole in Jamal's pocket, and the decision he's made during the restless hours of the night. "Grandma," he says as he helps her adjust her oxygen tank, "someone wants to meet with us, a man named Walter Blackwood." Mabel's hand still on the oxygen tubing. "Walter Blackwood," she repeats, the name clearly meaning something to her. "The Walter Blackwood? Of the Blackwood Foundation?" Jamal blinks in surprise. "You know him?" "Know of him," she clarifies. "He funded the hospital wing where your grandfather had his surgery. Donated computers to the high school about 8 years ago." She studies Jamal's face carefully. Why would Walter Blackwood want to meet with us? Jamal explains the encounter at the crosswalk, Walter's questions about the community, the business card with its invitation. He shows her the results of his internet search, explaining Walter's philanthropic history. Mabel listens with growing intensity, her expression shifting from skepticism to cautious interest. "And he didn't say what these opportunities might be?" "No, ma'am. Just that they would recognize potential and something about building bridges across circumstances." Mabel adjusts her glasses, thinking. Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to hear what the man has to say. But Jamal, her voice takes on the serious tone she associates with important life lessons. Don't you go getting your hopes up about handouts or miracles. We've managed on our own this far. Yes, ma'am, I agree, though hope has already taken root despite his best efforts to contain it. The school day passes in a blur of anticipation. During lunch, Jamal finally called the number on Walter's card, half expecting to reach a secretary or assistant. Instead, Walter himself answers on the second ring. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Jamal Carter.
We met yesterday at the crosswalk near Wilson's Grocery. Jamal. Walter's voice carries the same dignified warmth Jamal remembers. I'm pleased you called. Have you had a chance to speak with your grandmother? Yes, sir. She said we'd be willing to meet with you, but we're not really sure what this is about. There's a pause. Then Walter says, it's about recognizing exceptional character and creating opportunities where they're most deserved. Would tomorrow evening be convenient? Say 7 p.m.? I could send a car to bring you and your grandmother to my hotel suite.
We'll have dinner and discuss possibilities. The formality of the invitation, the mentioned car service, the hotel suite, the dinner, momentarily overwhelms Jamal. Tomorrow at 7 should work, but you don't need to send a car. We can take the bus. Nonsense, Walter replies firmly. My driver will collect you at 6:30. Text this number with your address. And Jamal? Yes, sir? Thank you for your help yesterday. It meant more than you realize. The call ends, leaving Jamal standing in the school courtyard, phone still pressed to his ear, wondering if he's stepped into someone else's life by mistake. That evening, he breaks the news to Zoe about the meeting with Walter Blackwood. Her reaction is predictably dramatic. A real billionaire? She gasps, eyes wide. Like private jet, mansion in every country billionaire? I don't know about that, Jamal cautions, but he's definitely wealthy and influential. And he wants to meet us? Why? I'm not sure, Jamal admits. He said something about opportunities and potential. Zoe's face lights up with possibilities. Maybe he wants to give us a scholarship, or a new house, or fund your college education. Zoe, Jamal interrupts gently, we need to manage expectations. Mr. Blackwood meets thousands of people through his foundation work. This could be a standard follow-up, or maybe he's researching community needs. It might not be about us specifically at all. But even as he says the words, he remembers the intensity of Walter's gaze, the deliberate way he'd taken Jamal's information, the specific request to meet with his grandmother present. This feels targeted, intentional, but toward what end, he still can't guess. The next day crawls by with agonizing slowness. At school, Jamal struggles to focus on lectures, his mind continuously circling back to the evening's meeting. At home, the atmosphere is charged with nervous energy. Grandma Mabel insists on wearing her church dress, navy blue with tiny white polka dots, reserved for Sundays and special occasions. She fusses with her hair, arranges and rearranges her oxygen tubes to make them less conspicuous. You look beautiful, Grandma, Jamal assures her, as she checks her reflection for the third time. I'm meeting a billionaire, she mutters, adjusting her pearl earrings, her only real jewelry, inherited from her own mother. A woman has her pride. At precisely 6:30 p.m., a sleek black car pulls up outside their apartment building. The driver, a professionally dressed woman with a kind smile, introduces herself as Monica and helps Mabel navigate the stairs with practiced efficiency. Zoe bounces with excitement in the back seat, barely contained by Jamal's cautionary glances. The drive takes them across town to the Grand, Westwood's only luxury hotel, a 12-story building that stands as an anomaly in the modest cityscape. In the lobby, marble floors and crystal chandeliers create an atmosphere that feels alien after the familiar shabbiness of their neighborhood. Jamal notices Grandma Mabel straighten her posture, lifting her chin with quiet dignity. The elevator attendant takes them directly to the top floor, where Walter himself waits in the hallway outside his suite. He's dressed simply but impeccably, navy slacks, crisp white shirt, no tie. His smile, when he sees them, seems genuinely pleased. Mrs. Carter, he greets Mabel first, extending his hand with respectful formality. It's an honor to meet you. And this must be Zoe, he adds, turning to the wide-eyed 12-year-old. Jamal mentioned his sister was quite exceptional. How did you know I was exceptional? She asks, momentarily forgetting her shyness. You just met him yesterday. Walter's eyes crinkle with amusement. Sometimes exceptional runs in families. Please, come in. The hotel suite is elegant but not ostentatious. A spacious living area with comfortable seating, a dining table already set for 4, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Westwood.
It's strange seeing our city from this height, Jamal thinks. The problem seems smaller, the opportunities larger. A catered dinner waits on a sideboard. Simple but beautifully presented dishes that Walter explains were prepared by a local restaurant he's considering investing in. The chef is remarkable, he comments as they take their seats. A graduate of Westwood High, actually. Self-taught until he received a culinary scholarship. The mention of a scholarship catches Jamal's attention, but he remains cautiously quiet, following his grandmother's lead. Mabel, for her part, maintains a dignified composure, answering Walter's polite questions about her history in Westwood, her late husband's work at the factory, her grandchildren's accomplishments.
It's only after dessert, a delicate lemon tart that Zoe declares the best thing I've ever tasted in my whole life, that Walter finally broaches the reason for their meeting. "Mrs. Carter," he begins, his tone shifting to something more formal. "I imagine you're wondering why I've invited your family here tonight." "The thought has crossed my mind," Mabel acknowledges, her own voice carefully neutral. Walter nods, as if appreciating her directness. "I've spent the better part of my life building things. First bridges and buildings, later companies, and now opportunities. At this stage of my journey, I'm focused on identifying exceptional individuals who could benefit from the resources my foundation can provide." He turns his attention to Jamal. "Yesterday, I witnessed something remarkable at that crosswalk. Not just kindness, though that was evident, but a quality of character that's increasingly rare. You see, before you approached, 3 other people walked past me. 2 were too absorbed in their phones to notice my situation. The 3rd actively avoided eye contact." Jamal shifts uncomfortably under the praise. "It wasn't anything special, sir, just helping someone who needed it." "On the contrary," Walter counters, "it was extraordinary precisely because you saw it as ordinary. Character isn't what we do when everyone is watching. It's what we do when no one is, or when we think no one is." He pauses, then adds, "Though in this case, someone was indeed watching." "What do you mean?" Mabel asks, her protective instincts visibly rising. Walter reaches for a folder on a nearby desk and places it on the table. "For the past week, I've had a small team conducting what we call a community character assessment in Westwood. We identify areas with significant economic challenges but strong community bonds, and we observe, looking for individuals who consistently demonstrate exceptional character despite difficult circumstances." He opens the folder, revealing photographs that make Jamal's breath catch. There he is, helping Mrs. Abernathy with her groceries after her hip surgery. There he is, tutoring younger students in the library during his lunch break. There he is, giving his bus fare to a freshman who'd lost his wallet. "These were taken over the past 5 days," Walter explains gently, "along with interviews with your teachers, your employer, your neighbors, all of whom, I might add, had remarkable things to say about a young man who consistently puts others first despite having every reason to focus solely on his own survival." Mabel's hand finds Jamal's under the table, squeezing tightly. "You've been watching my grandson?" Her voice carries a mixture of concern and fierce pride. "Evaluating," Walter corrects, as he had with Jamal, "for a very specific purpose." He turns another page in the folder, revealing what appears to be a legal document. The Blackwood Foundation's Bridge Builders program identifies exceptional young people and provides them with the resources to reach their full potential while maintaining their connection to the communities that shaped them. He looks directly at Jamal now. "We would like to offer you a comprehensive scholarship covering all educational expenses through graduate school, if you choose to pursue that path. Additionally, we would provide healthcare coverage for your entire family, a stipend for living expenses, and mentorship opportunities with professionals in whatever field you decide to enter." The room seems to tilt sideways as Jamal struggles to process the magnitude of what he's hearing. "All educational expenses?" he repeats faintly. "Tuition, books, housing, meal plans, technology requirements, study abroad opportunities if desired, everything," Walter confirms, "at whatever institution best suits your goals and talents." Zoe gasps audibly. Mabel's grip on Jamal's hand tightens to the point of pain.
And healthcare for my family? Jamal asks, his mind immediately calculating what this would mean for Grandma Mabel's treatments, for Zoe's asthma management. Walter nods. Comprehensive coverage through our foundation's partnership with national health networks. No copays, no deductibles, no exclusions for pre-existing conditions. This sounds, Mabel begins, then falters. Too good to be true. Walter finishes for her with a small smile. I understand your skepticism, Mrs. Carter, but I found that sometimes good things happen precisely because good people deserve them. He turns back to Jamal. There are, of course, expectations. You would maintain a minimum GPA of 3.0, though given your current academic performance, I don't anticipate that being an issue. You would participate in our mentorship program, both as a recipient and eventually as a provider. And most importantly, you would commit to returning to this community after completing your education, bringing your skills and knowledge back to the place that shaped you.
A bridge back, Jamal murmurs, understanding now the metaphor Walter had used. Exactly, Walter confirms. Not an escape route, but a connection, allowing talent to develop and then return, creating sustainable change from within. Mabel straightens in her chair, finding her voice again. And what does your foundation get from this arrangement, Mr. Blackwood? Far from being offended, Walter seems pleased by the question. A fair inquiry, Mrs. Carter. What we get is the satisfaction of seeing potential realized, the continuation of our mission to create community-based transformation, and, if I'm being entirely honest, the personal gratification of knowing that kindness recognizes kindness across generations and circumstances. He reaches into his jacket pocket and removes an envelope, placing it on the table. This contains the formal offer, including all details and provisions. Take it home, review it carefully, consult with legal counsel if you wish. I'd be happy to arrange that at the Foundation's expense. Ask questions, consider implications. This is not a decision to be made hastily or emotionally. Jamal stares at the envelope, simple white paper that somehow contains an entirely different future than the one he'd imagined for himself. A future where Grandma Mabel receives the medical care she needs, where Zoe doesn't have to worry about whether her asthma medications will be refilled, where his own potential isn't constrained by economic necessity. Why me? He asks finally, giving voice to the question that's been circling in his mind since yesterday's encounter. Out of all the people in Westwood, why choose me? Walter's expression softens. Because yesterday, when faced with an elderly stranger struggling to cross a street, you didn't just see an obstacle to your schedule or someone else's problem to ignore. You saw a human being needing connection. And that, Jamal Carter, is the essence of what we look for in our bridge builders. People who naturally build connections rather than walls, who strengthen communities through simple, consistent acts of compassion. He stands, signaling that the formal part of the evening has concluded. The car will take you home whenever you're ready. The envelope contains my private number. Call anytime with questions or concerns. As they prepare to leave, Walter stops Jamal with a gentle hand on his shoulder. One more thing, he says quietly. Whatever you decide about our offer, I want you to know that what I saw yesterday and what everyone around you sees every day is remarkable. The world needs more Jamal Carters, whether they have foundation backing or not. The ride home passes in stunned silence, the envelope resting on Jamal's lap like something fragile and explosive simultaneously. It's only when they're back in their apartment, when Zoe has finally fallen asleep after hours of excited speculation, that Mabel and Jamal sit at the kitchen table and carefully open the document that could change everything. The kitchen table, with its familiar water rings and small burn mark from a forgotten cigarette years ago, has witnessed countless family moments, holiday dinners, homework sessions, late-night conversations about dreams and fears. Tonight, it bears witness to something new, the careful unfolding of possibility. Mabel's hands tremble slightly as she reads through the formal offer letter from the Blackwood Foundation. 20 pages of legal language, financial commitments, and educational provisions that translate to a single life-altering truth.
everything is about to change. Full tuition at any accredited university, she reads aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Housing allowance, meal plan, textbooks and technology stipend, transportation costs, study abroad opportunities. Jamal sits motionless, each item on the list dismantling another barrier he had assumed was permanent. The healthcare coverage, he prompts gently, directing her to the section he's most concerned about. Mabel turns a page, adjusts her reading glasses, and continues. Comprehensive family health care plan through national health networks covering all pre-existing conditions, primary care, specialists, hospitalizations, prescriptions, rehabilitative services, preventative care. Her voice falters. Jamal, this would cover my oxygen, my medications, my specialist visits, everything. And Zoe's asthma treatments, Jamal adds, the weight of perpetual worry beginning to lift from his shoulders. There's more, Mabel continues, turning another page. Monthly living stipend of $2,500 for family support during your education. She looks up, eyes wide. Jamal, that's more than my Social Security and your part-time job combined.
The numbers are dizzying, not just the financial provisions, but the sheer scale of opportunity. Mentorship programs with leaders in whatever field Jamal chooses to pursue, internship placements during summer breaks, professional development workshops, networking opportunities with Blackwood Foundation alumni, and all of it contingent upon a single, powerful condition, that Jamal would return to Westwood after completing his education, bringing his skills and knowledge back to the community that shaped him. It's not charity, Jamal says slowly, understanding dawning. It's investment. In me, yes, but really in Westwood. Mabel nods, her eyes still scanning the document. There's a section here about community impact projects during your college years, summer programs where you'd work with local organizations, identifying needs and implementing solutions. She looks up at him. They're grooming you for leadership, baby, not just education. Jamal stands and moves to the window, looking out at the neighborhood he's always known, its struggles visible even in the darkness, its resilience evident in the lights still burning in windows where people work night shifts, study for better futures, care for family members, or simply refuse to surrender to circumstances. Do you think I can do this, Grandma? He asks, vulnerability rare in his voice. Live up to all of this? Mabel's chair scrapes against the linoleum as she joins him at the window, her small hand finding his. Baby, you've been living up to more than most grown men could handle since you were 13 years old. Taking care of Zoe and me, working while maintaining straight A's, never complaining, never giving up. She turns him gently to face her. This man, this foundation, they didn't create your potential. They just recognized what was already there. Morning brings clarity, the night's revelations settling into a new reality. Zoe bounces around the apartment, her enthusiasm infectious, as she lists all the ways their lives will change. We can fix the leak in the bathroom ceiling, and get you a new backpack that doesn't have duct tape holding it together. And maybe I can join the dance program at school, since we won't have to worry about the uniform costs. Her eyes widen with another realization. And Grandma can get that procedure the specialist recommended last year. Jamal smiles at her excitement, but cautions, we haven't officially accepted yet, Zoe. There's a lot to consider. Like what? She challenges, hands on her hips in a perfect imitation of their grandmother. What exactly are you considering that's better than this opportunity? It's a fair question. The Blackwood Foundation's offer represents everything Jamal has worked for, hoped for, prayed for, not just for himself, but for his family. Yet something holds him back from immediate acceptance, some instinct for caution born from years of seeing opportunities come with hidden costs. I just want to make sure we understand everything, he explains, though the answer feels incomplete even to him.
School that day exists in a strange parallel reality, where classrooms and hallways and cafeteria tables remain unchanged, while Jamal's entire future has been rewritten. He moves through his classes in a daze, his mind still processing the implications of last night's meeting. During lunch, Mr. Fernandez finds him in the library. "Jamal, I received an interesting call this morning from Walter Blackwood." Jamal looks up sharply. "He called you?" "Apparently, I'm listed as one of your academic references," Mr. Fernandez explains. "He wanted to discuss the science enrichment program they're offering you this summer. Preparatory coursework at State University, laboratory access, mentorship with Dr. Eleanor Chen." He shakes his head in amazement. "Dr. Chen is a Nobel laureate, Jamal. This is extraordinary." "I haven't accepted yet," Jamal says automatically. Mr. Fernandez studies him carefully. "May I ask what's holding you back? This is precisely the kind of opportunity I've been hoping would find you." Jamal struggles to articulate his hesitation. It just seems too perfect, like there must be a catch somewhere. "Sometimes," Mr. Fernandez says gently, "the only catch is our own disbelief that good things can happen to deserving people. I've been teaching for 27 years, Jamal. I've seen thousands of students come through these halls. None, and I mean none, have shown your combination of intellectual ability, work ethic, and fundamental decency." He leans forward, his expression earnest. "Walter Blackwood didn't choose you randomly. He chose you because people like you, people who overcome extraordinary obstacles while maintaining their integrity, are precisely what communities like Westwood need to thrive."
After school, instead of heading straight to Wilson's grocery, Jamal makes a detour. The public library, with its worn carpet and outdated computers, has been a sanctuary throughout his high school years. A quiet place to study when the apartment was too crowded or noisy. A source of books his family couldn't afford to buy. A connection to worlds beyond Westwood. Today, he uses one of the public computers to research the Blackwood Foundation more thoroughly. What he finds both reassures and humbles him. The Bridge Builders program has been operating for 15 years, with over 300 participants nationwide. News articles highlight success stories. A doctor who returned to her rural hometown to establish a medical clinic. An engineer who designed affordable housing in his urban neighborhood. A teacher who created an award-winning STEM program at her former high school. The program's retention rate is remarkable. 92% of participants complete their education and fulfill the community return commitment. Many continue working with the foundation afterward, mentoring new generations of bridge builders or expanding their community impact projects. Most striking are the testimonials from family members, describing transformations that extended far beyond the individual scholarship recipient. Grandparents receiving medical care they'd gone without for years. Siblings finding their own educational paths inspired by their brother or sister's journey. Parents able to retire after decades of physically demanding labor. One particular story catches Jamal's attention. A young man from Detroit whose situation mirrored his own. Raised by his grandmother after losing both parents, working part-time while maintaining academic excellence, selected for the program after a chance encounter with Walter Blackwood. 7 years later, he's a structural engineer working with the city planning department, married with a young daughter named after his grandmother, who lived to see him graduate thanks to the medical care provided through the foundation. By the time Jamal arrives at Wilson's grocery for his shift, his decision has crystallized. This isn't just about him. It never has been. It's about Grandma Mabel receiving the medical care that could extend and improve her quality of life. It's about Zoe having opportunities that don't require her to grow up too fast. It's about returning to Westwood, not as someone who escaped, but as someone equipped to create change from within.
Mr. Wilson notices the shift in Jamal's demeanor immediately. "You seem different today," he observes as Jamal ties on his apron. "Something happened I should know about?" Jamal considers how much to share, then decides on honesty. "I've been offered a scholarship, Mr. Wilson, a big one, through the Blackwood Foundation." Mr. Wilson's eyebrows rise. "Walter Blackwood? The billionaire?" "Yes, sir. We met when I helped him cross the street near here the other day. Turns out he was in Westwood looking for someone for their bridge builders program." Mr. Wilson lets out a low whistle. "And he picked you. Can't say I'm surprised. When do you start?" "There's a summer program before college begins, but—" Jamal hesitates. "I'd have to cut back my hours here, maybe switch to weekends only." Far from being disappointed, Mr. Wilson claps him on the shoulder. "Son, I've been waiting 5 years for you to tell me you're moving on to bigger things. This store was never meant to be your final destination." "I'll still need to work," Jamal insists. "The stipend covers basics, but I want to save extra for Grandma's medical needs, for emergencies." Mr. Wilson nods thoughtfully. "Tell you what, I've been thinking about expanding our delivery service. Lots of elderly customers who struggle to get here, especially in bad weather. Weekend position, flexible hours, better pay than stocking shelves. Would that work with your new schedule?" The offer is perfect. Continued income with flexibility for his studies, plus the satisfaction of helping community members who need it most. "That would be amazing, Mr. Wilson. Thank you." Mr. Wilson waves away his gratitude. "Don't thank me. This is pure self-interest. Having a future doctor or lawyer or whatever you decide to become associated with my store, that's good business." That evening, Jamal calls the number Walter provided. The billionaire answers on the first ring as if he'd been expecting the call. "Mr. Blackwood, it's Jamal Carter. We've reviewed your offer." "And?" Walter's voice carries no pressure, only patient interest. "We'd like to accept," Jamal says, the words setting his future irrevocably on a new path. The scholarship, the healthcare coverage, all of it.
"I'm pleased to hear that, Jamal," Walter responds, genuine warmth in his tone. "I believe this partnership will benefit not only you and your family, but the entire Westwood community in years to come." "There's just one thing," Jamal adds, surprising himself with his boldness. "The crosswalk where we met, the signal changes too quickly for elderly people or anyone with mobility issues. It's been that way for years and no one's done anything about it." Walter is silent for a moment, then chuckles softly. "Are you already starting your community improvement projects, Jamal?" "I guess I am, sir." "Consider it addressed. My foundation will contact the City Transportation Department tomorrow. Now, about your summer program, there's an orientation session next Saturday at State University. My assistant will email all the details, but I'd like you, your grandmother, and your sister to attend if possible. It's important that families understand the journey ahead." The next weeks unfold with breathtaking speed. Paperwork is completed. Medical appointments are scheduled. Academic assessments are conducted. Grandma Mabel meets with specialists who develop a comprehensive treatment plan for her COPD and arthritis. Zoe's asthma medications are adjusted, her doctor no longer constrained by insurance limitations. At Roosevelt High, news of Jamal's scholarship spreads rapidly. Teachers who always believed in his potential feel vindicated. Peers who barely noticed him suddenly see him differently. Some reactions are genuine congratulations. Others carry the edge of envy or disbelief. Through it all, Jamal maintains the same humble focus that caught Walter's attention in the first place. The orientation at State University marks Jamal's first time on a college campus. The sprawling grounds, historic buildings, and state-of-the-art facilities initially overwhelm him, but the welcome session for bridge builder scholars and their families creates an immediate sense of belonging. 20 other students from various backgrounds share this year's cohort, all exceptional in their own ways, all selected for the same combination of academic potential and demonstrated character.
Their family situations vary widely. Single parents, grandparents, foster families, siblings raising siblings. But they share the common thread of overcoming significant obstacles while maintaining their integrity and commitment to their communities. Dr. Eleanor Chen, the Nobel laureate Mr. Fernandez had mentioned, gives the keynote address. Her message resonates deeply with Jamal. Education is not an escape route from challenging circumstances. It's a toolbox you assemble to rebuild and strengthen the communities that shaped you. The most valuable knowledge is that which returns home, multiplied by experience and opportunity. After the formal presentations, Walter Blackwood himself leads Jamal, Mabel, and Zoe on a tour of the science facilities where Jamal will spend part of his summer. As they walk, Walter explains more about the philosophy behind the Bridge Builders program. We don't just identify academic talent, he says, passing through a laboratory filled with equipment Jamal has only read about in textbooks. We look for something rarer, the natural inclination to build community, to extend kindness without calculation, to see connection rather than competition as the path to progress. He pauses, looking directly at Jamal. The day we met, you didn't see a wealthy philanthropist in need of assistance. You saw another human being struggling with a simple task that you could help with. That perspective, seeing need rather than status, is precisely what the most effective community leaders possess. The summer program begins 2 weeks after Jamal's high school graduation. 5 days a week, he joins the other Bridge Builder scholars at State University, dividing his time between college preparatory classes, laboratory research with Dr. Chen, and community development workshops led by Foundation alumni. Weekends find him at Wilson's Grocery, now driving the store's delivery van to elderly customers and families without transportation. The flexible schedule allows him to balance work with his studies, and the higher pay means he can contribute to a savings account for Grandma Mabel's future needs, despite the Foundation's comprehensive healthcare coverage. The transformation in their daily lives is profound but gradual. Their apartment building hasn't changed, but inside their unit, small improvements accumulate. A new oxygen concentrator for Grandma Mabel that doesn't make the disruptive noise of her old model. A desk for Zoe's bedroom so she no longer needs to do homework at the kitchen table. Reliable internet service that allows Jamal to complete research assignments without trekking to the library. More significant is the shift in their collective outlook, the slow relaxation of the constant vigilance that accompanies financial insecurity. Grandma Mabel no longer hides her pain on days when her arthritis flares, knowing she can now afford both treatment and rest. Zoe joins the school dance program, her natural talent flourishing with proper instruction. Jamal sleeps through the night for the first time in years, no longer waking to recalculate budgets or worry about unexpected expenses. 1 month into the summer program, Walter invites Jamal to lunch at a small cafe near the university. The billionaire, dressed as simply as he was the day they met, greets Jamal with a warm handshake and genuine interest in his progress. Dr. Shen speaks highly of your work in her lab, Walter mentions as they settle at a corner table. She says you have a natural intuition for research methodology. It's all new to me, Jamal admits, still uncomfortable with praise, but fascinating. I never imagined science could be so creative. That's precisely why exposure to these environments matters. Talent without opportunity remains potential unrealized. The conversation ranges widely, from Jamal's coursework to his family's adjustment to their new circumstances, from his tentative thoughts about medical school to his ideas for addressing Westwood's healthcare desert. Throughout, Walter listens more than he speaks, offering guidance only when directly asked, treating Jamal as a colleague rather than a charity recipient. As their meal concludes, Walter mentions casually, I thought you might like to know that the City Transportation Department has adjusted the timing on that crosswalk. The signal now allows an additional 12 seconds for pedestrians to cross safely. Jamal looks up in surprise. They actually did it? Walter smiles. Sometimes all it takes is the right person asking the right question. Which reminds me, he reaches into his jacket pocket and removes a small wrapped package, a small token to commemorate our first meeting. Inside the package, Jamal finds a silver pocket watch, elegantly simple, with his initials engraved on the back. Time is our most precious resource. How we spend it reveals our true priorities. He gestures toward the window, where pedestrians hurry past, most absorbed in their phones or personal concerns. That day at the crosswalk, you prioritized compassion over convenience. That choice, multiplied across a lifetime, is what transforms communities. As summer transitions to fall and Jamal begins his official freshman year at State University, the story of the black teenager who helped an elderly man cross the street and whose life transformed as a result begins circulating through Westwood. Initially shared as neighborhood gossip, it evolves into something more powerful, a narrative about recognizing the extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary, about the ripple effects of simple kindness, about the potential that exists in communities often defined by their challenges rather than their strengths. What Jamal doesn't yet realize is that his story has only just begun, that the path from that crosswalk to his future role in Westwood's revitalization will inspire hundreds of others to look more carefully at the intersections in their own communities, to recognize the transformative power of extending a hand to someone in need, and to understand that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the smallest steps. 4 years transform more than just education. They reshape perspectives, deepen understanding, and fortify purpose. As Jamal Carter walks across the stage at State University's commencement ceremony, the diploma in his hand represents not just academic achievement, but a journey that has redefined what's possible for both himself and the community that raised him. From the audience, 3 figures watch with undisguised pride. Grandma Mabel, her oxygen tank now a smaller, portable model that allows greater mobility, dabs at tears with a handkerchief. Beside her sits 16-year-old Zoe, her natural grace and confidence having blossomed during these years of stability and opportunity. And next to Zoe is Walter Blackwood, now 82, but still a commanding presence. His blue eyes sharp with the same focused intelligence that assessed Jamal at a crosswalk 4 years earlier. Jamal's transformation is evident beyond the ceremonial cap and gown. The tentative teenager has become a purposeful young man. His shoulders no longer carry the weight of financial desperation, but instead bear the responsibility of potential realized. His smile, once cautious and rare, now comes easily, the expression of someone who has found his place in the world. The diploma declares his double major, biology and community health policy, with honors in both. But his education has extended far beyond classrooms. Through the Bridge Builders program, Jamal has completed internships at research hospitals, shadowed physicians in underserved communities, and developed a comprehensive healthcare access initiative specifically designed for neighborhoods like Westwood. Jamal Carter, the dean announces, and cheers erupt from multiple sections of the audience, not just from his family and Walter, but from a surprising number of Westwood residents who have made the journey to witness this milestone. Mr. Wilson from the grocery store, Mrs. Abernathy, whose hip is healed enough that she now only needs a cane. Former teachers from Roosevelt High, including Mr. Fernandez, who had first recognized Jamal's scientific aptitude. Their presence speaks to something remarkable that has happened during Jamal's college years, something that goes beyond one young man's academic success. As part of his Bridge Builders commitment, Jamal has spent every summer and many weekends back in Westwood, implementing community health initiatives that have already begun transforming the neighborhood. What started as a small health education program at the community center has expanded into a network of services: preventative care workshops, a prescription assistance program, transportation coordination for medical appointments, and most recently, plans for a neighborhood health clinic that will break ground next month. Each initiative created ripples of change, employment opportunities, improved health outcomes, renewed hope in a community that had grown accustomed to being overlooked. After the ceremony, amid photographs and congratulations, Walter pulls Jamal aside for a moment of quiet conversation. "I've been thinking about our first meeting," the elderly philanthropist says, his voice lower but no less clear than it was 4 years ago. "About crosswalks and choices." Jamal nods, understanding the metaphor immediately. Life is full of them, isn't it? Moments where we decide whether to stop or keep walking. Precisely. Walter gestures toward the gathering of Westwood residents who have come to celebrate Jamal's graduation. And sometimes, one person stopping creates a path for others to follow. Jamal follows his mentor's gaze, seeing the community connections that have formed and strengthened during his years at State University. Mr. Wilson is deep in conversation with Dr. Chen about potentially hosting a science club for neighborhood children at his store. Zoe is introducing her dance instructor to a group of younger girls from Westwood who look at her with undisguised admiration. Grandma Mabel, whose health is stabilized with proper medical care, is sharing photos on her smartphone, a technology she mastered during Jamal's sophomore year when he set up video calls to stay connected between visits home. The clinic breaks ground next month, Jamal reminds Walter, though the billionaire surely hasn't forgotten. The Westwood Community Health Center represents the first major physical manifestation of the Bridge Builders program in the neighborhood, a 10,000-square-foot facility that will provide affordable healthcare services to an area that has been a medical desert for decades. "And you'll be starting medical school in the fall," Walter adds, pride evident in his voice, "while overseeing the clinic's development. Ambitious schedule." "I learned from the best," Jamal responds with a smile. "A wise man once told me that time reveals our true priorities." Walter chuckles, touching the pocket where he still carries his own antique timepiece. "Indeed. And speaking of priorities, there's something I'd like to discuss with you and your family tonight. A next phase, if you will." That evening, in a private dining room at the Grand, the same hotel where they first discussed the Bridge Builder Scholarship 4 years earlier, Walter presents his vision for expanding Jamal's impact beyond Westwood. "The foundation has been monitoring your community health initiatives," he explains as Mabel, Zoe, and Jamal listen attentively.
The participation rates, the preventative care outcomes, the community engagement, all exceptional. We believe your model could be replicated in similar neighborhoods across the state, perhaps eventually nationwide. He slides a folder across the table, a mirror of that first meeting, but containing an entirely different proposition. "We'd like to establish the Carter Community Health Initiative as a formal program within the foundation, with dedicated funding for implementation in 5 additional communities over the next 3 years. Jamal opens the folder, finding detailed projections, budget allocations, and implementation timelines. The numbers are staggering. Millions of dollars dedicated to expanding the healthcare access programs he's developed, resources to hire staff, research support to document outcomes, partnerships with major medical centers to provide services. This would mean splitting your focus, Walter cautions. Medical school demands extraordinary commitment on its own. Adding program development and oversight responsibilities." He leaves the challenge unstated but clear. "I wouldn't be doing it alone," Jamal says, looking at his family. "That's what I've learned these past 4 years. Real change isn't created by solitary heroes. It's built by communities working together, each person contributing what they can." He turns to Zoe, who at 16 has developed her own leadership qualities, organizing youth programs at the community center, tutoring younger students, following her brother's example of service while forging her own path. "Zoe's already running half the youth programs. She could coordinate the educational components while I focus on the clinical partnerships." Grandma Mabel, whose health stabilization has allowed her to return to community activism, adds, "And I've got a whole network of seniors ready to volunteer. Who better to help navigate healthcare bureaucracy than those who've been fighting with it for decades?" Walter nods, clearly pleased by their collaborative thinking. The foundation would provide operational support,
Program managers, administrative staff, evaluation teams. Your role would be visionary and strategic, ensuring the initiative maintains its community-centered approach. The conversation extends late into the evening, exploring possibilities, addressing challenges, crafting a vision that builds on everything Jamal has learned during his bridge builder's journey. By the time they leave the hotel, the outline of the Carter Community Health Initiative has taken shape, not just as an extension of Jamal's individual story, but as a new chapter in Westwood's collective journey toward transformation. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Westwood Community Health Center takes place on a brilliantly sunny morning in July. The vacant lot where an abandoned gas station once stood has been transformed into a construction site with architectural renderings showing the modern facility that will rise here over the next 8 months. A crowd gathers for the occasion: neighborhood residents, local officials, healthcare partners, media representatives. Walter Blackwood stands near the front, deliberately positioning himself not as the center of attention, but as a supportive presence. Today belongs to Jamal and the community he represents. When Jamal steps to the podium, the crowd falls silent. No longer the hesitant teenager who once worried about bus fare, he speaks with the quiet confidence of someone who has found his purpose. 4 years ago, I helped an elderly man cross a street. It was a small act, the kind that happens thousands of times every day in communities like ours, where looking out for one another isn't exceptional, it's essential. What was exceptional was that someone recognized the value in that everyday kindness. He acknowledges Walter with a respectful nod. The Blackwood Foundation didn't create the spirit of community that exists in Westwood. They simply provided resources to amplify what was already here: our resilience, our compassion, our determination to care for one another despite challenges. Jamal gestures toward the construction site. This health center represents more than access to medical care. It represents what becomes possible when we recognize the extraordinary potential that exists in ordinary acts of kindness. When we understand that the most valuable resource in any community isn't money, it's people who choose to see each other's humanity. The ceremonial shovels turn the first soil. Photos are taken. Applause ripples through the crowd. But the most powerful moment comes afterward, as Jamal walks through the gathering, greeting people individually. The elderly neighbors he's helped navigate Medicare paperwork, the young mothers whose children have received preventative care through his weekend clinics, the teenagers he's mentored, who now express interest in healthcare careers themselves. Walter observes these interactions from a distance, satisfaction evident in his expression. When Jamal finally makes his way to his mentor, the elderly philanthropist remarks, "You've built something remarkable here, Jamal. Not just programs or buildings, but trust. That's the true foundation of community transformation." "I had a good example," Jamal responds. "Someone who saw potential where others just saw problems." "Speaking of potential," Walter says, glancing toward where Zoe stands surrounded by younger girls from her dance program, "I've been watching your sister's development with great interest. Her leadership qualities are quite distinctive." Jamal follows his gaze, pride evident. "She's incredible. Completely different path from mine, more arts-focused, more extroverted, but the same core values. She's already talking about college programs in arts administration and community development. The foundation would be interested in discussing possibilities with her when she's ready," Walter mentions casually. "The Bridge Builders program has evolved to recognize different types of leadership. Not everyone builds bridges the same way." The significance of this comment isn't lost on Jamal. The Blackwood Foundation's support could extend to Zoe, creating not just individual opportunities, but a continuum of impact that could span generations. The realization is humbling that what began as a simple act of helping an elderly man cross a street could ultimately transform not just his life, but his family's future and his community's trajectory. As summer transitions to fall, Jamal begins medical school while overseeing the development of the Carter Community Health Initiative.
The dual responsibilities are demanding, requiring careful time management and strategic delegation. But he approaches each day with a clarity of purpose that makes even the most challenging schedules manageable. Grandma Mabel's health continues to improve with consistent care and reduced stress. The apartment they once struggled to maintain has been renovated, not into luxury, but into comfortable functionality that accommodates her needs, while preserving the sense of home that has anchored their family through difficult times. Zoe thrives in her final years of high school, her natural leadership abilities developing through increasingly responsible roles in community programs. The stability provided by the Blackwood Foundation's support has allowed her to focus on her potential rather than family survival. But she maintains the same work ethic and compassion that characterize her brother. Walter, now approaching his mid-80s, begins deliberately stepping back from direct involvement in the Foundation's operations, transitioning leadership to a carefully selected team while maintaining his personal connection with the Bridge Builders program. His relationship with Jamal evolves from mentor-protege to something closer to partnership, each bringing complementary perspectives to their shared vision of community transformation. 2 years after the groundbreaking, the Westwood Community Health Center celebrates its first anniversary of operation. The statistics tell one story of success: thousands of patient visits, preventative screenings that caught health issues early, chronic disease management programs that reduced emergency room usage, employment opportunities for neighborhood residents. But the human stories reveal the deeper impact. Mrs. Abernathy, who no longer needs to choose between medication and groceries. Jerome Williams, a former classmate of Jamal's, who found purpose as a community health worker after years of underemployment. The Davis family, whose youngest child's asthma is now properly controlled through the center's pediatric program. On a crisp autumn evening, Jamal sits with Walter on a bench outside the center, watching neighborhood residents come and go through doors that symbolize more than healthcare access. They represent possibility, dignity, and the tangible results of investment in human potential. "I've been thinking," Walter says, his voice showing his age but his mind still sharp as ever, "about what might have happened if we'd never met at that crosswalk." Jamal considers this counterfactual carefully. "I'd still be working at Wilson's, probably, taking night classes at community college if we could afford it, doing my best to keep Grandma's health stable with limited resources. And Westwood? Still a medical desert, still a place where potential gets limited by circumstance." Jamal gestures toward the health center, where lights illuminate rooms where evening programs continue, support groups, health education classes, professional development for community health workers. But there would still be good people doing their best with what they had. That was never the problem here. Walter nods appreciatively. "That's what I've always valued about your perspective, Jamal. You never saw this community as broken, just under-resourced. You understood that the raw materials for transformation were already present." "I learned that from Grandma," Jamal admits. "She always said that being poor doesn't mean being without value. It just means society hasn't recognized your worth yet." A comfortable silence settles between them as they watch the center's activity. After several minutes, Walter speaks again, his tone reflective. "When I established the Bridge Builders program, critics said I was being naive, that investing in individuals wouldn't change systemic problems, that providing opportunities to a few talented young people wouldn't transform communities facing decades of disinvestment." He gestures toward the health center. But they missed the fundamental principle. Transformation isn't about buildings or programs or even funding. It's about recognizing potential and creating conditions where it can flourish. "Like cultivating a garden rather than just planting a single tree," Jamal suggests. "Exactly." Walter's approval is evident. And the most effective gardeners are those who understand the soil because they grew from it themselves. As darkness falls, the center's lights cast long, warm rectangles across the sidewalk, pathways of illumination guiding community members home. From inside comes the sound of a children's choir practicing, their young voices blending in harmony that speaks to something beyond the music itself, the synchronicity of shared purpose, the strength found in community. 5 years ago, Jamal observes, if you'd told me this would be possible, that I'd be in medical school, that Grandma would be thriving, that Zoe would be looking at colleges, that this center would exist, I wouldn't have believed you. It would have seemed like fantasy. And yet, Walter responds, it all began with a moment that seemed entirely ordinary. You saw someone struggling at a crosswalk and chose to help. No calculation of benefit, no expectation of return, just the simple recognition of another person's need. Jamal nods, understanding the profound truth in this observation. The most important crosswalks aren't the ones on streets. They're the moments when we decide whether to extend ourselves for others. In the years that follow, the ripples from that first crosswalk encounter continue expanding in ways neither Jamal nor Walter could have fully anticipated. The Carter Community Health Initiative extends to neighborhoods across the state, each implementation adapted to local needs but maintaining the core principles of community involvement and dignity-centered care. Jamal completes medical school, choosing to specialize in family medicine with a focus on underserved communities. His clinical training takes place primarily at the Westwood Health Center, where he works alongside physicians who share his commitment to equitable healthcare access. Zoe follows her own path into the Blackwood Foundation's Bridge Builders program, focusing on arts-based community development that complements her brother's health-centered approach. Together, they create a model of holistic neighborhood revitalization that addresses both physical well-being and cultural vitality. Grandma Mabel, whose improved health grants her additional years of active involvement, becomes a respected elder in the Foundation's Community Advisory Council, ensuring that programs remain grounded in the lived experiences of those they aim to serve. And Walter Blackwood, witnessing the exponential impact of his investment in one young man's potential, revises his foundation's strategic priorities to place even greater emphasis on identifying and supporting everyday heroes, individuals whose ordinary acts of kindness reveal extraordinary capacity for leadership.
On Walter's 90th birthday, a celebration is held at the Westwood Community Center, a facility that didn't exist when he and Jamal first met, but now serves as a vibrant hub for neighborhood engagement. The guest list includes bridge builders from across the country, community partners, foundation staff, and Westwood residents whose lives have been touched by the programs that grew from that initial encounter. Jamal, now Dr. Carter and the medical director of a network of community health centers, offers a toast that captures the journey they've shared. 10 years ago, an elderly man needed help crossing a street, and a teenage boy stopped to offer his arm. In that moment, neither could have imagined where that simple connection would lead, not just for them, but for thousands of others whose lives would be transformed by what grew from that intersection. He raises his glass toward Walter. You saw potential where others saw only problems. You recognized that sometimes the most powerful change begins with the simplest human connections. And you taught me that the most important question we can ask ourselves isn't, what can I achieve, but who can I help across whatever street they're facing today. The applause that follows speaks to more than respect for either individual. It celebrates a philosophy of transformation that begins with recognizing the extraordinary potential in ordinary acts of kindness. A philosophy that understands that sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with something as simple as extending a hand at a crosswalk, not knowing that this single step will lead to pathways that transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. As Jamal looks around the room, at his grandmother, healthy and engaged, at his sister, confident and purposeful, at Walter, whose investment in human potential has yielded returns far beyond financial measure,
at community members whose lives have been improved through programs that grew from a chance encounter. He understands that the true legacy of that crosswalk moment isn't measured in buildings constructed or programs implemented. It's measured in the thousands of everyday interactions where people now choose to stop rather than walk past, to connect rather than ignore, to invest in potential rather than focus on problems. In a world that often celebrates grand gestures and dramatic transformations, the quiet power of simple human kindness remains the most profound catalyst for lasting change.